Hello and welcome to the world-famous Driving You Crazy podcast. This is the show where we talk about all things transportation, anything that gets you from here to there. I am the traffic anchor and the transportation reporter for Denver 7 News, Jason Lubert. If you would like to be a part of the program, you could always give me a call on the listener hotline, which has been fairly cold lately. That number, 303-832-0217. You also have all the contact links in the description of this fine program. Today on the show, we're going to be talking about super cruising. No, not in a boat, but in a car. And when I say super cruise, I mean General Motors Super Cruise feature. They call it their hands-free feature rather than full self-driving feature, since there really isn't a true self-driving car out there just yet, even though GM is working on something called Ultra Cruise, which is more self-driving, but not there yet. So just a bit. We'll be speaking to General Motors Assistant Chief Engineer of Super Cruise, Jeff Miller. I'll ask him about Ultra Cruise, and we'll also talk about Super Cruise and all the aspects of self-driving and hands-free driving, and if the roads have to be enhanced, and what is involved in the vehicle to make it hands-free, I guess, and is there a difference between their technology and something like you've heard with Tesla? I got a whole bunch of questions for Jeff, and we'll talk to him coming up in just a little bit. I think it'll be pretty interesting. This just in from AAA. The annual cost of a new car ownership surges past $10,000. Before reading through this email from Skylar McKinley, friend of the show, and his news release, my guess is that it's going to be based on gas prices. All right. So he says, amid historic inflation, new car buyers are paying more for all things automotive, including fuel, maintenance, and insurance. That's the latest from AAA's Your Driving Costs Analysis, which found the average annual cost to own and operate a new vehicle in 2022 is up more than 10% over last year. According to this year's report, the average yearly cost to own and operate a new vehicle in 2022 is $10,728 or $894 a month. That's an 11% increase from 2021, where the average yearly cost was $9,666 or $805.50 per month. Not surprisingly, fuel prices are the most significant factor driving up this year's average annual price tag. Boom, there it is. I would think the cost of the vehicles are also probably driving a lot of this cost as well, because I think their monthly cost is probably the monthly cost to own the vehicle or to lease a vehicle, which have obviously gone up. Skylar continues, an electric vehicle owner will spend about 4 cents per mile to charge their vehicles at home, while the owner of a gas-powered vehicle will spend an average of 18.4 cents per mile to gas up. Assuming both drive 15,000 miles a year, it would cost approximately $2,700 a year to fuel the gas-powered vehicle and $600 a year to charge the electric vehicle. Well, those numbers would change because gas prices are changing. I'm sure they're figuring out the gas price based on a certain level. I don't know what it is, but let's just say it was $4 a gallon. Well, gas could be $5, gas could be $3, gas could be $2.50, gas could be $4.75, and it changes, it fluctuates. So that's got to be a fluctuating number, the $2,700, and it's the same with electric vehicle charging, as that kilowatt hour cost is different as well, depending on if you're charging during the day, when your kilowatt hour cost is higher. If you're charging it during a tiered billing, on a tiered billing plan, where you are charged more during the summer and the winter than you are at other times, or are you doing overnight? Are you doing it at work? So the 4 cents a mile is based on what as a per kilowatt hour charge. Those are all. You have to start thinking about that as your kilowatt hour charge is basically your gallons of gas charge. So like in my car, my Chevy Volt, it gets, I can hold, I think it's 16 kilowatts, maybe 17 kilowatts of electricity. So it's not very much. It was one of the first generations of electric vehicles, so it doesn't really hold as much as the Teslas and the newer vehicles that can get a range of 300 or 400 or 500 miles. Mine, at pure optimal battery, temperature, outside temperature, charge everything, so I can usually get about 45 miles in the most optimal of driving conditions, I could maybe get 45 miles on one single charge. It's usually closer to the 35 miles on a charge. And it changes depending on how you're driving it, if you're driving it fast or slow or whatever. So anyway, it's complete. You can't just say it's 4 cents a mile because your mileage varies dramatically in an electric car, similar to a gas car, an ICE car, but not as much. So let's say you're driving all uphill. You are going to obviously use more gas than you are driving downhill. But in an electric car, you're going to be using more of the power for all of your stuff that's inside the car than I think you are going to be using for gasoline inside your ICE car. Because you have the generator in your engine for a regular gas car generating electricity to run to charge up the battery, that little 12-volt or big 12-volt battery that then is powering your radio and any other electronic stuff that's in your car, right? So it's just coming off the natural motion use of the engine. So it's different. So and they're not putting that in there. This is coming from a vehicle owner, me, who drives an electric car and has for almost 10 years now. So all of that changes. Anyway, this is what Skylar continues in this thing from AAA. Beyond fuel savings, electric vehicles have the lowest maintenance, repair, and tire costs. That's because gas-powered vehicles require additional maintenance, such as oil changes, air filter replacements, and inspection of mechanical components not present in electric vehicles. That is definitely true. Additionally, electric vehicles have the lowest fees due to federal and state rebates offered to buyers of new electric vehicles as a purchase incentive. Speaking of that purchase incentive tax credit, that climate legislation that just passed recently significantly expands the consumer tax credit for buying an electric vehicle on a federal level, as the federal government offers $7,500 as a tax credit. That means you get that money back. It's not a tax cut. You're not taking $7,500 off of your income, so it's not reducing your taxable income and then you're getting a break from that. You actually get the $7,500 back if you buy the EV. That's what happened when I bought mine. But there's a catch here. In this new legislation, the EV has to be made with a certain percentage of minerals that's mined or processed in nations with U.S. free trade agreements or be recycled in North America. So right now, that provision that's in the legislation required for the tax credit doesn't exist. See, minerals required to make market-ready EV batteries, the lithium, the cobalt, the graphite, the nickel, they're primarily mined, refined, and processed in China, in Russia, in the Congo, and Indonesia. And these aren't countries that are really part of a U.S. free trade agreement. That means the electric vehicle tax credit is basically impossible to get right now. The original $7,500 credit that I just talked about that I got for consumers buying an electric vehicle in previous years is limited to 2,000 or 200,000 vehicles that have been sold per manufacturer. So since there weren't that many volts sold, I qualified for that. But as more and more of the vehicles, let's say a Chevy Bolt or any of the other EVs, as they're selling 200,000 of these vehicles, that's when the credit goes away. So the automakers will hit that cap and you can no longer benefit from that credit. That's why the new credit was put into this legislation. However, the mineral requirement right now in the legislation is 40% by 2024. And then that mineral requirement goes up to 80% by 2027 and 100% by 2029. So a lot of things are going to have to change. Whether we're going to mine it here, which I don't think we have all of that stuff here in the United States, maybe, or they're going to have to start recycling a lot of the old batteries from the first generation electric vehicles, or start recycling all the rechargeable batteries, the double A's that you're putting in your kids' toys, right? So if you want an EV, then you're going to have to check to see that credit is really still available before you buy one. And speaking of EVs, the CEO of Ford, Jim Farley, He was saying that he expects the cost of these raw materials to make electric vehicles to stay pretty expensive, meaning the price of electric vehicles will continue to go up and not come down. Because typically, as you get technology that is improving over years, just think of computers, TVs, the prices usually come down, right? Now when you wanted to buy an 80-inch screen TV, it would cost you $10,000, right? Now you can get it for like $300. Maybe not that cheap, but you see my point. Same with computers and phones and all that stuff. But the prices of lithium and cobalt and nickel, they continue to go up, and that's making the cost to create the batteries for electric vehicles expensive. And that cost, of course, gets passed on to you when you're buying one of these electric vehicles. And that's why they wanted to have this tax credit. But you can't get it because we don't have these free trade agreements with these countries that are mining all this stuff. In fact, Ford says most EVs will increase in price between anywhere from $6,000 to $8,500, depending on the model. And Ford isn't alone in this. Tesla has increased its prices. Rivian has increased their prices for their electric vehicles. And I think the only change here we're going to see in these prices is really in battery technology, in the technology of creating batteries and creating storage of electricity without using all those minerals. And there's actually a company here in Colorado. I've been trying to get them on the show. It's called Solid Power. They are working on developing solid-state batteries for electric vehicles, and these solid-state batteries have the potential to offer more range for EVs, shorter recharging times, lower risk of fires than the lithium batteries. So it's a different technology than the current technology and doesn't use as many of those minerals. So maybe that's where all of this is going. Well, anyway, we'll see how it goes. And I'm still trying to get Solid Power on the show, and I'm hoping to do that in the next several weeks. Solid Power says they should have a prototype battery of their solid-state prototype battery ready to deliver to Ford and BMW by the end of this year to start testing it and see how it works. But vehicles using those batteries, for us to buy, are still years down the road. So I think that's where the new technology is going to go. That's why I still think that hydrogen is a great idea. It's still a little costly, but still creating electricity from hydrogen, where you only have the byproduct as water vapor, is really a great option. It's just trying to come up with the hydrogen and creating the hydrogen, fueling the cars, and then running them on the hydrogen. I'm surprised that more of the research and development and money isn't going into that, and it's still going all for electric-powered vehicles. Anyway, I think it's all pretty interesting here. And separate from EVs is self-driving, right? But it could be the future of cars, because I think the dream of the future of vehicles has to be fully self-driving cars out there, right? Because we keep getting closer and closer. Every day we're one step closer to that future. And General Motors recently announced that their Super Cruise hands-free driving feature is now available on more roads. Well, what exactly is Super Cruise? Well, why can't you use it on every road? I have a lot of questions here about this and self-driving, and so I invited General Motors Assistant Chief Engineer of Super Cruise, Jeff Miller, to be here on the show to talk all about it. Jeff, thanks for being here and joining me on the world-famous Driving You Crazy podcast.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Jeff, I mentioned the self-driving in that introduction, and as I understand it now, there really isn't a true self-driving feature yet or vehicle yet. So explain what the difference is between Super Cruise and self-driving, and I think you also have something called Ultra Cruise.
Yeah, so Super Cruise is the industry's first true hands-free driver assistance technology for enabled roads. Essentially what it is, we've developed it around two key advanced technologies: LiDAR-based mapping, as well as a driver attention system, in addition to real-time cameras, radars, and precision GPS. We utilize all those inputs, and we call it fusion. We fuse all those inputs into one, and that's really how Super Cruise determines where it can operate and how it will operate. Today, we're geofencing it to operate only on divided highways, and these are typically interstates that we know today, about 200,000 miles of roads throughout the U.S. and Canada. And we're going to talk today about some of the the enhancements that we have coming up.
And what is the true difference between hands-free and self-driving? What is the difference there for me as the user?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, Super Cruise is a hands-free driver assistance technology. So you can't hit the button and read a book or go on a computer and answer emails or go in the back and sleep. The driver still needs to be paying attention to the road. So what we have with Super Cruise is we have a driver attention system, which is the little camera that's mounted on top of the steering column that is monitoring both the driver's head pose and their eye gaze. So there's some redundancy there to ensure that the driver is still paying attention. So while the system may be automating certain things like steering, braking, throttle apply, maintaining a gap to the vehicle ahead of you, the driver is still engaged in paying attention to the road. So this allows you to relax on your drive, whether it's a daily commute, a long vacation drive that you're heading down to Florida or Texas or whatever it may be, to just sit back, still pay attention to the road, supervise the system, and relax.
But I think as well as I do that if the car is going to do something for me and make it easier for me to drive, and I could just let my hands go, that I'm going to be in my head thinking, hey, what's to prevent me from just checking out mentally and then reading a book or grabbing my phone and start scrolling through the Instagram feed?
Yep. So that driver attention system that I mentioned, it's monitoring your head pose and your eye gaze. So if it detects after a certain period of time that you're not paying attention to the road, and that period of time that it's looking at varies based on vehicle speed as well as road curvature. So obviously, if the vehicle speed is higher, you're covering more ground in a given period of time. So we don't allow you to look away as long at higher speeds.
But you can look away, though.
Yep, we allot enough time for you to change the radio station, adjust the temperature in the vehicle, those sort of things. You have sufficient time to do those, but certainly we don't allow sufficient time, and we do not recommend you texting, talking on your phone, or reading emails, those sort of things.
So let's say I have one of those dash mount things where I can put my phone into a little suction cup that's right there on the windshield, right? And so I have my phone up there, and I will... All right, I'm admitting to you, Jeff, that I sometimes watch TV while I'm driving. Okay, and now mostly I'm just listening. No. I'm just listening to it most of the time, right? But I could see it. So what's to stop me then? So the car can see my eyes, it can see my face, but I'm looking at the TV that's sitting there right in front of where I should be looking at the road.
Yep, you do need to move your eyes around. So if you're just sitting and looking at one spot, it will tag you eventually. Oh. In a period of time. So you do need to be, moving your head, moving your eyes. If we do lane changes, we like you to obviously supervise those as well, and to look to the side to make sure that the lane adjacent to you that you're turning into is clear.
And then what happens to the car as I'm sitting in there and it says, look, this doofus is just not paying attention right now, and I need to wake him up. So what does the car do at that point? Give me alarms? Does it just shut the system off and then start pulling over? What does it do?
Yep. So we go through several iterations, or we call it an escalation path, if the driver attention system determines that the driver is not engaged or paying attention. So it'll start off a little more softly with the safety seat alert, or the haptic seat will shake or gently vibrate to try to get your attention. We utilize the light bar on top of the steering column that will flash green to try to get your attention. If you don't respond to that, the light bar is going to flash red. You're going to continue to get the haptic seat that's going to shake. You're going to get chimes, so there's audible alerts. If you don't respond to that, then you're going to get an angry lady over the speaker system that yells at you and tells you to take control of the vehicle.
Hopefully in an English accent.
Yes. It's loud, and it's meant to get your attention, because at that point you've been traveling for some period of time without looking at the road, and at that point, if you don't respond, we assume we have an incapacitated driver that's not paying attention and is not able to take control of the system. So we will begin slowing the vehicle down in its lane. We'll turn the hazards on, bring the vehicle to a safe, controlled stop in its lane, and then OnStar is going to dial into the vehicle to get you help.
That's really interesting. My guest is General Motors Assistant Chief Engineer of Super Cruise, Jeff Miller. So that is actually, when the car takes over, that is almost the car becoming self-driving at that point, where it is controlling everything, the braking, the steering, the controlling of getting off to the shoulder and then stopping altogether.
Yeah, I don't like to use the term self-driving with Super Cruise. It is a hands-free driver assistance technology, so the driver still needs to be engaged. When you tell folks it's a self-driving or autonomous car, they think they can completely check out, and you cannot do that with Super Cruise.
But doesn't that car pretty much do that task if the car thinks that the person in that instance is incapacitated?
Yeah, it'll operate in that capacity to stay in its lane to bring the vehicle to a safe, controlled stop. And again, we'll have OnStar dial into the vehicle to get you help.
And to go back onto that point you just made about self-driving versus Super Cruise, do you think Tesla becomes the problem because they're making the perception of the average casual driver that the car will drive itself and that you can engage their self-driving technology and you just sit back and you can take a nap, because we've seen people with videos of that. And is that an education issue? Is that just a problem for all the other automakers, including General Motors, to overcome, because Tesla is out there saying we have a self-driving car and you should be able to have that too in every other model?
Well, I'm certainly not a Tesla expert. I don't know their decision-making process and how they execute their products. But what I can say, here at General Motors, we want to take a safe, more conservative approach to driver assistance technology. That's why anytime I talk about Super Cruise, I like to talk about it in plain terminology. It is a driver assistance technology. It's hands-free. It's not an autonomous technology. It's not self-driving. It's a driver assistance technology that will automate certain tasks like steering, brake, apply, throttle, as long as the driver's engaged. And really, our approach has been much different than some of our competitors. We have that LiDAR-based mapping that geofences Super Cruise to operate only in areas that we are confident it can operate safely and confidently. And then we have that driver attention system to make sure that the driver is engaged and still paying attention to the road. In the event that the system needs to hand back control, they are ready to do so.
And General Motors has been working on something called Ultra Cruise as well, which is, I believe, more self-driving technology. So what are those differences between, as you say, the Super Cruise and maybe the next level of Ultra Cruise?
Yeah, so Ultra Cruise, there's a whole separate team. There's another counterpart, or my counterpart, that's working on that and leading that effort. But essentially, our ultimate vision is a system that will enable hands-free driving or transportation in 95% of all driving scenarios. That is what Ultra Cruise is going to accomplish. So it's still a driver assistance technology. The driver still needs to pay attention to the road and remain engaged, but it really broadens the operating domain. And that's what Ultra Cruise is going to be doing here in the next couple of years.
Do you think, as I'm speaking with General Motors Assistant Chief Engineer of Super Cruise, Jeff Miller, that there will ever be true self-driving? Are we 10 years, 20, 50, 100 years?
Oh, I wish I could put a pin on exactly when that's going to occur. I think it's going to occur. It has to occur at some point. Technology is going to continue to evolve. Honestly, I don't know when, though. We're going to continue to push our technologies like Super Cruise, Ultra Cruise, and moving towards that vision where we can give drivers their time back. When you're commuting, the ultimate goal would be that you could be answering emails and be doing things that are more constructive or for your calendar, as opposed to just sitting there and driving.
I was reading that the Super Cruise technology currently works, as you were talking about, on those mapped divided highways, and that this expansion of Super Cruise is going to allow it to work on more roads because of the mapping that you folks have been doing. Why does the system need roads to be mapped out in this way? Why can't I get in my car here at home and then drive to work, and it works on the surface streets, it works on the highways, it works all the way to where I want to go?
So that's one thing that I take pride in, is our safe approach to driving or assisted driving technologies. With Super Cruise, we chose to only operate on roads that we map. So what we do is we work with a supplier who has LiDAR equipped vehicles. They go out and scan the roads that we'd like to operate on. When they're scanning these roads, they're collecting information and building a map that has all the information about the road. We know how many lanes there are. We know we can see where the lane lines are with the camera system. We know road curvature, elevation, merge points, entrance, exits, those sort of things. So we know everything about the road, and that helps us and helps Super Cruise to operate with more confidence, because we know what's coming up. ahead of us. So if, say, you're traveling 70 miles an hour on a highway, and we know that there's a sharper curve coming up, we can slow the vehicle down in advance to be at a more appropriate speed for that higher curvature road or corner coming up, so that it's a more comfortable experience for our customers.
How often is this mapping happening? Because road conditions can change, whether it's deterioration, whether it's a pothole. How does that mapping keep up with the changes in road work, road construction?
Yep. So we're mapping all the time. As you're aware, there's construction everywhere. We have a bunch of it here in Michigan. It can be frustrating, but we have ties and communication paths to each of the departments of transportations in the United States. And when we're in communication with them, they let us know when construction is going to be starting and ending. So we know when construction has ended, if they've changed or shifted the road in some manner. We can then talk to our mapping supplier to go precision LiDAR map those roads so that our customers have the latest and greatest map at all times. Previously, we were on about a quarterly update or a quarterly map update process where we would push fresh maps to the customers on a quarterly basis. Right now, we're actually improving that timing. We're on about a monthly basis. We're going to continue to enhance that area to try to push the latest and greatest maps more frequently. But right now, it's about a monthly basis.
My guest is General Motors Assistant Chief Engineer of Super Cruise, Jeff Miller. That has to be pretty expensive. And I would imagine that as you're doing this, you might want to share that cost with other automakers. So is this just GM exclusive where you have this map all by yourself? Or is Ford also in there? Is Chrysler also pitching it a little bit? BMW, Toyota, is it through all the automakers or just individually GM?
Yeah, I don't know if others are using our specific mapping supplier, but I do know that the map that we use is GM proprietary. So we have unique things in there that only that we build and that we want in that map that other suppliers are not allowed to use.
So if the roads have to be equipped and mapped in a special way, basically to accommodate the Super Cruise, then do the traffic lights and the road signals and crosswalks, those sort of things, also have to be equipped as well, so your Super Cruise features can know that the traffic light is going to be changing, or that there's a crosswalk there and to watch out for pedestrians.
So today we do not operate in those areas. If, for example, in this new road expansion where we're doubling the number of miles that Super Cruise is capable of operating on, we're going from 200,000 to 400,000 miles of roads in the U.S. and Canada. A lot of those roads, they do have traffic lights or crossings or those sorts of things. We shut off those sections. So I forget the exact number, but a couple hundred meters prior to that traffic light, we will turn Super Cruise off and hand control back to the driver. And then once you've driven through that traffic light, we will then enable the road again or the map, and then Super Cruise will be able to come back on.
So that's a feature that will always be either turning on, turning off, allowed to use it, not allowed to use it, depending on where you're driving at this point. But do you see then a future in the next 5 years, 10 years, that feature will be allowed to stay on and be able to slow you down at the traffic light? Or is that part of the Ultra Cruise or the eventual self-driving technology that is much farther down the road?
No, we're always looking for ways to improve the feature set and the technology to provide the greatest benefit to our customers, but nothing to announce in that space today.
How does bad weather affect your Super Cruise? I'm traveling, let's say, here in Colorado, and I'm on one of the interstate highways, and either it starts raining, or, as you know, in Colorado or in Michigan, it could start snowing. So how does that affect the Super Cruise feature?
Yep. So Super Cruise it's a radar-based system, it's a vision-based system, and it's a map-based system. So when we're driving down the road, like I said, in the map, we know everything about the road, but we also utilize cameras to determine where the lane lines are so that we can center the vehicle in lane. If, for example, you have heavy snow or heavy rain, where the camera system cannot pick up those lines, or the lines are washed out through wear and they haven't been maintained, Super Cruise will detect that. It'll detect that the lines have been degraded and can no longer pick them up. And will hand control back to the driver so that you can drive through those areas.
So again, that's almost part of the mapping technology. and also the systems that are on board with this car. So really the infrastructure of the road itself, the paint on the road actually is a pretty big important feature for the Super Cruise to be able to keep super cruising.
Yep, and that's part of the reason why we've chosen the roads that we operate on today. Is those tend to be higher traveled roads. There's many more people traveling on those roads than say other secondary roads, so they tend to be more highly maintained and in better condition, so that you don't run into scenarios where the lane lines are frequently washed out, and you have to take back control.
So is this feature available on only select vehicles that GM is going to be making, or is it going to be available on all new cars and trucks? And going forward, how is this technology going to change on the newer vehicles?
Yep. So we've launched quite a few vehicles with Super Cruise so far. It started in 2017 on the Model Year 18 CT6. Since then, we've launched the Model Year 21 Escalade, the CT4, CT5, the V Series for both of those. We've launched Super Cruise on the 22 Bolt EUV, as well as the light duty pickups, so the Sierra, the Silverado, and the Hummer. So we're making a big splash. We're committed to launching Super Cruise on 22 new vehicles by the end of next calendar year, so by the end of calendar 23. So while we have launched Super Cruise on quite a few vehicles, we got a lot more to go, both this year and into next year, and then we're going to keep going. So we're committed to 22 by the end of next year.
You probably have to have some kind of a great big supercomputer in the vehicle to run the programming and all the sensors and all of that stuff. Is it connected to 5G? Is it doing real time between either other cars or the infrastructure network?
So all the computations and the algorithms are done in the vehicle. Now, we do require a data connection so that we can transfer the latest and greatest map to the vehicle. We do that over the air. And now we're also, due to the VIP electrical architecture, the vehicle intelligence platform, which started in 21, the CT4, CT5, the Escalade, many of our newer vehicles are on that architecture. That allows us to do OTAs. So we're going to be able to enhance the feature set and be able to provide customers with that latest and greatest feature set through the air. So that's part of the reason why that data connection is there as well. But when Super Cruise is in operation, we utilize precision GPS, but all the decision making, the algorithms, all of that is done in, as you called it, the mega computers or supercomputers and modules that are contained in the vehicle.
And does all of this come as an extra cost to me, the buyer of the vehicle? Do I have to pay a extra fee? I know BMW is now charging for me to turn on their already equipped heated seats. So am I going to have to pay for this additional feature?
Yep. So there is additional hardware that is added to the vehicle. And when you go to order a vehicle, or if you go to the dealership, you'll notice in the label that there is a charge for Super Cruise because there is additional hardware to enable that feature set. On our Cadillac models, I believe it's $2,500, and then Chevy, Buick, and GMC will be $2,200.
And then is there an operational cost, like a monthly cost or a yearly cost, to allow this function to happen?
Yep. So with the charge or the pricing that I just mentioned, that's included in MSRP, that does include 3 years of usage. So we provide 3 years of connectivity and data for Super Cruise to continue to be used over the course of those 3 years. Once that 3 years has expired, the owner will have to subscribe to a data connectivity package that enables Super Cruise, and that's about I believe it's $25 per month here in the U.S.
Now, basically the same as if I wanted to hook up my OnStar in my current GM car.
Yep, and when you get that standalone Super Cruise package that enables Super Cruise, you do also get that OnStar Emergency Advisor. In the event that we sense, or the driver attention system senses that you have an incapacitated driver, you do get that OnStar Emergency Advisor service as well.
My guest is General Motors Assistant Chief Engineer of Super Cruise, Jeff Miller. Do you think people are ready for self-driving cars, for hands-free cars? It's one thing to have automatic windows. That's easy. Everybody gets that, and I think everybody gets the cruise control feature, right? But are people ready to have that feeling where you're letting go of the steering wheel and your passengers are looking at you like, what magic stuff is happening right now? I feel a little bit freaked out because I'm sitting in the passenger seat and you're not holding the wheel and you're barely looking at the road.
Well, there are different buckets of people in the population. We'll always have that small percentage of folks that are early adopters. They love technology. They want the latest and greatest. They want more and more and more, right? And then there are others that may be more conservative, that are just hesitant, that it may take more time to get accustomed to the technology. I know when I first started working on the Super Cruise program about 4 years ago, the first time that I Super Cruised, I remember my hands were hovering over the wheel. I wasn't sure what the system was able to do. I didn't have confidence in the system, but after driving for about 15, 20 minutes, you really gain confidence pretty quickly in what the system's capable of doing. So I think as people start to see the technology rolled out and they experience it, they're going to be more adapt to buying it. And in fact, on our CT6 customer base, we had surveyed them, and of those that had used Super Cruise, 85% of those customers said that they need Super Cruise or want Super Cruise in their next vehicle purchase. So it's truly one of those features that once you've used it, you can't live without it.
That's interesting, your perspective there, but you were sitting behind the driver's wheel and you were the one letting go. You weren't sitting in the passenger seat looking at the person next to you letting go. So that has to be a whole different feeling, though.
Yeah, it's a different dynamic. My wife, she had that same type of feeling, but like I said, even if you're a passenger, it really only takes a couple of minutes to become confident in the system and to see what it's capable of doing.
So you think, or at least that's what she's telling you. Have you folks looked at any of these legal issues that have come up since Tesla has been doing this and other automakers have been dabbling into this self-driving and hands-free driving? Like the questions about who's responsible in case of a crash or a problem while these systems in action. Is it the car maker? Is it the software company? Is it the driver? Is it the state because there was a problem with the traffic signals or the connectivity problems? Or is it the company, the LiDAR company that's supposed to be looking at everything? So there's got to be so many issues here, challenges to overcome with who's responsible if any of these features are enabled and then there's a crash.
Yep. So like I said, Super Cruise is a driver assistance technology. So the driver needs to be engaged. And that's why we placed the driver attention system in there to make sure that the driver is still paying attention. We do work with NHTSA, and we report any crash through their SGO or standing general order. And we analyze any and all crashes to determine if the system was at fault. To date, we haven't had any where Super Cruise has been at fault, and our customers have driven more than 34 million miles utilizing Super Cruise to date.
Interesting. My guest is General Motors Assistant Chief Engineer of Super Cruise, Jeff Miller. In the short few moments that we have left, what is next for Super Cruise? What's beyond hands-free? Do you merge Super Cruise with Ultra Cruise, or do you go on to Super Ultra Cruise? Is there another level of Mega Cruise?
I'd love to tell you what's next. What I can tell you is that we're not going to stop. We're going to keep working on advancing not only this technology, but bringing forth new technologies. We're always looking to provide the greatest benefit to our customers, and we're not going to stand still. So there is more to come, but nothing to announce today.
Because when I'm talking about all these cruise stuff, it sounds like you're working for Royal Caribbean, frankly. But well, all right, Jeff Miller, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate all your insight, all your expertise. It really is an interesting feature, and we'll see how it goes in the future.
Thanks. It was a pleasure. Take care.
All right. If you want to get some more information about Super Cruise and the technology, it's all available right now in the link that I have in the description of this show. I think Jeff wasn't. I don't know how he took it. He did smile when I mentioned Mega Cruise. Because, I mean, look, when you start using cruise technology and you have different levels of different kind of cruise things, Super Cruise, Ultra Cruise, why not go for Mega Cruise? I mean, what's next after Mega Cruise? Ultra, Mega, Super Cruise? You can't combine all of them. You have to have them in separate things. But what's bigger than Mega Cruise? Universal Cruise? I don't. It's one of the many cruises out there. It reminds me. I don't know why I think it's so funny. So you'll see it probably at your local TV station. I know we do it here at my TV station, and you'll hear a news copy saying, "Crews were out cleaning up this crash," or "Crews were out doing this or that." What cruise? Tom? Ted? Penelope? What? What cruise? I don't know. I just think that's funny, and it's stupid. I know it's really stupid, and you can go ahead and leave me a comment and tell me how stupid it is on the listener hotline, 303-832-0217. Anyway, thanks again to GM for hooking me up with Jeff. I thought it was pretty interesting, especially talking to him about the whole self-driving stuff. Actually, I'm going to be talking to another guy from GM next episode, and we're going to be talking about electric vehicles and an interesting part of the electric vehicle. So most emergency responders know how to respond when they get to a crash involving regular vehicles that are filled with gasoline or diesel, whatever. It's a different challenge for those folks, for the firefighters and the paramedics and the police officers and the tow truck drivers, to respond to a crash involving electric vehicles. Not all of them know how to handle the vehicle, where they can touch it, how they cannot get electrocuted, all those different aspects of dealing with a EV. And let's say some of the batteries rupture, and is it likely going to catch on fire, start smoking? And so how do they deal with all of that stuff? Well, GM, they have this program to train first responders, and I think second responders too, to EV emergency situations. And so that'll be interesting to get their perspective on how that training goes and what they are training and why it's so important. So I'll have that on the next episode. Anyway, thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. And I'm Jason Luber, the traffic guy. Be safe. And as always, happy motoring.